Welcome back, everyone. So, one of the big things that we want to explore with today's festival is what is the role of big business and how do we actually sort of try and focus on bringing in the concepts of sustainability and innovation at those organizations which have the biggest impacts in the world. So we're going to explore this question now with Tanya Popeau, who's the director of the sustainability consultancy Synthesis. She's got a long history working in places like the United Nations, modeling some of these new ways of doing things and taking them to organizations like Unilever and HSBC. She's going to open up and give us a lot more information about her journey. So please welcome Tanya to the stage.
Thank you. It's great to be here this morning, and it's great to see so many positive faces. It's true that we've woken up in a very different world, and it's true that this will probably impact the environmental agenda and social issues globally. So it's great to have the opportunity to speak to you about the positive role that design can play in driving both social and environmental impact. So firstly, as was said, I'm a former United Nations advisor, and I supported the design of their innovation strategy and scaled this globally, largely across Asia and Europe. This meant working with expert teams to design new innovations which drive both social and environmental change. So some of this meant scaling carbon-reducing technologies, but also designing campaigns to address gender-based violence. I went on to lecture on the model that I designed for the UN, so I lecture at both postgrad and undergraduate level. And I also work with large corporates, and many of those large corporates are desperately wanting to change. There is a real perception that they're just focused on profit, which many of them are, but within these organisations there are people dedicated to change, and this is where designers can connect with this community. So where are we now? What does the landscape look like? How is sustainability impacting business? We know that we are facing pressing, urgent global challenges. But we also know that new legislation came in just this year, which means next year, for the first time in history, large corporates have to disclose their ESG data alongside their financial performance data. This means we're already seeing an upswing, an uplift in activity driving sustainability. We also know there's a massive commercial opportunity here, and we're talking in business, and I think the language of business is in growth, is in profit, so we need to engage in this dialogue. 45% of businesses have incorporated the UN SDGs into their model, but 96% of consumers are expecting them to do more. This leaves business with an opportunity to design new products, new services that have that dual purpose of driving growth, driving profit, and driving change. Many people think it's not possible, but I've worked extensively across the globe with organisations to do just that. We look at the reports, lots of the research demonstrate that those businesses that are investing in sustainability, embedding sustainability into their business models, are both seeing growth and an increase on return on capital. There's a transition to make, absolutely, but it is happening. We also look at the consumer. Now, we talk extensively about the say-do gap, but consumers are expecting business to step in. 86% of consumers are expecting CEOs to speak up on society and environmental issues, and 68% of them are expecting them to step in and solve these challenges. Think about Roe versus Wade. Think about the impact that Marcus Rashford had when he spoke up on food poverty and the way that big businesses backed his call. So how do we do this? That's what the landscape looks like. How do we design for sustainable impact? And how does this differ from traditional design processes? Firstly, when I speak to designers, they say they start with the solution. Of course, many of them are under pressure from the clients, but there is consultation, but we move rapidly to a solution. In my processes, and when I work on designing for sustainable impact, we spend a huge amount of time on deconstructing the challenge, the social or environmental challenge we're working on, and framing the challenge. I'm going to show you a case study in a moment that focuses on this. Secondly, we're all guilty of this. We tend to work with the same people again and again, and of course that produces the same results. What is crucial in designing for impact is that we engage with the end user and involve them very intensively in our design process. We tend to have a light touch consultation at the beginning and at the end, but we don't work with them to frame the challenge. Often they have a better understanding of the challenge and, crucially, to design the solution. And lastly, I understand that often our design processes and what we're doing is confidential. But if we are going to achieve the global goals, we've got to ensure that we take a more open source approach and we work collaboratively. Cross-sector collaboration is crucial if we're going to drive change in our supply chains and drive change across our value chains as well. So, as I said, exploring the challenge is the key place to start and the time we have to spend more time here. Often what we do is design products and services, particularly when it comes to social environmental issues, which haven't met the needs of the end user. And this is because we haven't delved deep enough and we haven't asked the right questions. So let me take you through a case study. This was the first case study that I took into the United Nations to demonstrate to them the design process that I would be taking them through. 20 million babies are born worldwide prematurely, and 4 million of these babies die in developing countries because of hypothermia. So a team in Stanford, they wanted to focus on this challenge. And the first original challenge they started to focus on was, how can we build a better incubator? They went into the field in India and they spoke to mothers, doctors, clinicians, and they realized they were asking themselves the wrong question. The question they needed to be asking themselves was, how do we keep a baby warm? Because this is the root cause of the challenge. It's the root cause of the problem. They did more investigation, more focus on that discovery phase, and they realized there were two key issues. One was around affordability. Incubators are very expensive. And the second one was around accessibility. Often when you have families who live in the rural areas, the time that it takes them to reach hospitals, the babies tend to die en route. So they needed a fast, affordable solution. They applied the design process and they came up with a very different, cheaper solution, which is the miniature sleeping bag you see on your screen. Understand the root cause, engage intensively with the end user, and design the fastest, most effective, affordable solution. This is the process that design is the power that you have to make positive change. So much of what I design is under NDA, so I can't really speak about it, but I will share with you a few examples. I worked with UN China, who worked with Baidu, which is the equivalent of Google in Asia. They wanted to focus on electronic waste. Of course, given China's population, there's a huge amount of electronic waste. What they did was design an app for the end user, which connected them with the local disposal unit. The local disposal unit would understand the electronic waste that they had and collect it from the end user and dispose of it safely. The app scaled to 22 cities, and you can see there was a huge amount of waste safely collected and recycled. This isn't one of mine, but there was a couple in Zambia who worked with UNICEF Zambia. They were desperate to increase the scale of their medicine kits and get them into the rural areas in Zambia. Who has some of the biggest distribution channels in the world? Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola is not perfect, but what they asked them to do is put the medicine kits into the crates. You can see they were ergonomically designed so they could sit on the top of the crates, and almost overnight they increased their scale by 30 to 40%. This is the power of supply chains. Right now, most business, they're focused on risk, compliance, reducing energy consumption. All of this is important, reducing carbon emissions. However, we don't tend to think about the power of our supply chains, connecting schools, hospitals, communities globally, and lots of businesses do use this, particularly in war and conflict. I know that many people use their warehouses and supply chains to drive change. And finally, of course, the banks have a major role to play in carbon emissions, and they're making their transitions, but also in social issues. This is an example of HSBC, one of their initiatives. They work as safe places. So if you are experiencing domestic violence, you can enter any HSBC bank, and they have trained staff who can support you. They support you on your the social and emotional side of things, but they also help you to gain economic control. This has been one of their most flagship initiatives which are driving change. And of course, On one hand, they're dealing with an extremely sensitive social issue, and on the other hand, they're welcoming new customers into their doors. And I think this really is the future of business. Businesses that enhance and develop new products and services that have that dual purpose of driving profit, driving growth, they are businesses, but also driving change. It requires radical innovation, radical design to change what we have right now. Business as usual is not possible. The trajectory as we're going on, the overconsumption, overproduction is not possible. But the radical design process, radical innovation can lead to businesses which have that dual purpose and are sustainable and work for people and the planet. So to close, we know that designers right now have to use their voices to drive change and create businesses, products, society, economies that are both sustainable and work for people and the planet. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Shall we take a seat?
Sure.
Some questions. So we've got about 6 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Again, lots of questions coming in online and via the app as well, so hopefully we'll be able to get through some of them. So the first question that came through is, what advice do you have for getting leadership in big businesses to understand that designers need to be involved in every step of the way?
Understanding that design process, demonstrating to them examples that can make change. I think I see it on both sides. I see designers who don't believe that growth is possible, so they just talk about reduction and just talk about reuse. And in the current business model, that seems to be the only option. But I think it's a meeting in the middle. So we need to kind of upskill designers to understand how to innovate, to create business models that work for people and planet, but also, therefore, they're able then, therefore, to talk to leaders in businesses to demonstrate that profit is possible and driving change is possible at the same time. Where I see change is where I work with leaders in large corporates who are genuinely passionate about the environment, genuinely understand that we've got to drive social change as well, but also understand there's a commercial opportunity. And right now we tend to have one group of people who are just focused on reduction and one group of people who are just focused on profit. And where we see change is where they can meet in the middle.
Can you talk a bit more about your journey in that instance? How have you sort of developed your own sort of business acumen sort of to speak the language of business to make that convincing case?
I've worked across both public sector and private sector. I think because of that reason, I see what's achievable. I think we get stuck in dialogues. So business gets stuck in the dialogue. You know, we're all still recovering from the pandemic, and they get stuck in the dialogue that the only way to drive profit is to focus on the linear business model and focus on the models that we have right now. Most people are adverse to change. Most people are risk adverse. And designers have that opportunity. They understand how to start with a blank slate and develop solutions which can work, which can, develop new products and services which can work. Business doesn't have that kind of knowledge, and they tend to continue to repeat the same cycle, what has gone before. When leaders speak to me today, they say to me, we feel like we're in a black room. You know, we've got a mask over our eyes, and we have no idea how to lead the current crowd, how to lead our staff. And so when I have worked with them and shown them the examples, worked with them to practically develop new solutions, then that changes mindsets. So I think it's about designers understanding how to use their practical skills to demonstrate to big business, demonstrate to leaders that it's possible. And so to just come full circle back to your question, yeah. It was the practical step of working with both people who care about planet, but also people who care about profit, bringing them together so there is cross-collaboration and working together to design change. It's the practice of doing that that leads to change.
Great, thank you. I think Sian's question that's come in online kind of follows up with that, which is what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give to encourage people to come without a preconceived solution when time and efficiency on a project and deadlines and the sort of current way of doing things can be so strict?
So I think that innovation can be structured. I think what tends to happen is people get together and they spend a long time talking, and that's what I would advise against. I think that you do need to have the right people in the room, and you do need to spend a huge amount of time on discovery and framing the challenge, as I said. But at the same time, you've got to have a structure. You've got to, there are many innovation structures, and they do mostly focus on the private sector. So I think it's important to have people in the room who understand the social side of things, understand the environmental side of things. That's where we often go wrong. Yeah. But I would say explore a relevant innovation framework so that you do still move rapidly from that problem statement to your solution. It's just about the proportionate amount of time that you spend on framing the challenge. So instead of spending, a huge amount of time on developing the solution, you actually, dedicate a huge amount of time to exploring that challenge and bringing in the right people. Because often, we just have similar faces in the room instead of having diverse voices, which can help us design and develop solutions.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, a slightly tricky question, I think, but this I think goes to heart with one of the challenges we've got with big businesses. So, for example, HSBC, they're saying one of the questions, they're going against their net zero pledge, removing their sustainability chief from exec committee, amongst other actions that are not for the planet. And so I think in this space, we've got questions like greenwashing and businesses saying these things, pledging these things, and not following up with the action. So how do you grapple with those particular tensions?
It is happening. I think that's why I pointed out the legislation, that disclosure is going to be very important because it's putting pressure on business. They can't hide. Our biggest stakeholders are your employees, are your consumers. They see and they know. We've seen lots of whistleblowing. You can think of the Shell example where you had that employee very vocal. I seem to be the sustainability whisperer. People are always coming up to me and saying, that business that you think is sustainable, it's not, and this is what's going on. It's only going to come to the surface. The other thing with that greenwashing and all of that kind of falsification of what's going on, it's businesses that don't recognise the commercial opportunity, and there is a definite commercial opportunity here. We know that new businesses, we see them developing technologies, green technologies, which are, profitable and driving change. So I think there's lots of fear out there, and there definitely has, and we as consumers have put pressure on them. And so many of the companies have developed sustainability plans, and they have absolutely no idea how they're going to get there. And that's what leads to greenwashing. So the more that we as designers can step up and present to them solutions, be it external companies, so maybe SMEs that have designed new technologies, we look at natural dyes, don't we, in fashion, or new green technologies, new energy resources, the more that we can step up and provide them with the templates, because that's what they desperately need. Make no mistake, they know that they are in trouble. They are under pressure. There's still a kind of division between the CFO over here and sustainability teams over here, but the gap is closing. And so I think the more we can provide solutions, the more we can raise our voices and put that pressure on business as well, I think we're just going to continue to see change in the right trajectory. Great.
Well, thank you so much. Again, so many other questions I want to follow up on, but we're going to leave it there. But thank you again, and please say thank you to Tanya. Cool, thank you. So, that conversation is probably setting up for some of the later discussions, debates that are coming up later. Now, for our online audiences, you're going to get an exclusive sneaky peek at the next in the Design Council's Life and Design series. So, we're really pleased to showcase NOPLA and Carlin Sybil, who's the design director at NOPLA, who are a B Corp and also the recipient of the Earthshot Prize. And they're doing a lot to challenge packaging by using seaweed. So stick around, watch that video, and we'll be back with you shortly.